Thank you. Good morning, Parallel London. It's a pleasure to be here. As you've heard, my name is Adam Pearson. Some of you may recognise me from the TV. I've got one of those faces. And did you feel that? The awkward moment that just filled this tent. For some reason, whenever disability is mentioned, it turns people into almost babbling morons. Case in point, I studied at uni in Brighton. And I was in the house one day. I was the only one in. And the gas man came round and I let him in, and he was nothing but charming and good at his job, but the whole time he was looking at me really weirdly. And I was just walking around the house thinking, okay, one of two things is happening right now. Either he's figured out I'm disabled, or I'm about to get laid. Either way, Monday's just got amazing. And as he leaves, he just turns to me and says, "Call as you like." "Oh yeah, my friend Bill has a disfigurement." "Do you know him?" "What? No. However, my friend Paul is a bloody idiot. Do you know him?" And those kind of situations get me thinking, is why is discussing disability, why is talking to disability, about disability, or even sometimes sitting near a disabled person, why does it make people feel so awkward? And it's because it's almost unknown, it's almost unheard of, and the only way that we are ever going to remove that stigma and break down those barriers is talking about it and giving people permission to talk about it. And it all comes down to how we as disabled people talk about disability as a topic, and also how we talk about disability in the context of ourselves. There is a great deal, or there certainly can be, a very high level of insecurity, worry and paranoia when it comes to disabled people. I recently went on Celebrity Eggheads, and I got completely and utterly crushed, to the point where my mum joined Twitter just to tweet me that I hadn't done very well. And I got a Game of Thrones question wrong. It was highly embarrassing. And I then went home and just mastered Game of Thrones. And there's this really powerful quote. It's both at the start of the books and at the start of the TV series, where Jon Snow and Tyrion Lannister have an interaction. Jon Snow is the illegitimate son of Ned Stark, and Tyrion Lannister is the outcast of his family because of his size. And these two men, who are from either side of the wall, so to speak, but have remarkably similar experiences, just had this amazing exchange where Tyrion Lannister says to Jon Snow, "Never forget who you are, because surely the world will not. Use it as your strength, and it will never be your weakness. Wear it like armor, and it will never be used to hurt you." And as a disabled person, I think it's very important that you get to, or as close to that as you can, when interacting with the outside world. And I'm not for a second saying it's easy, and we all have good days and bad days. But that is very much kind of step one for removing stigma around disability, is owning it, making it look cool, going out in the world and doing your thing. And then we come to the way that the public sees disability. I'm very fortunate, whereby I landed on my feet out of uni. I got a very good admin job at the BBC, and then I came into work one day. I was late and I was like wicked hungover, and had a random chat with a random guy in a lift, who turned out to be the head of TV at the BBC, who thought I was quite funny and tried me out on screen. And since then I've been able to go and do a lot of really interesting documentaries looking at disability from various different angles. Historically, disability in TV had not been done well. And it was very much a culture of kind of Channel 5 documentaries with very sensationalist names. You know, the one that starts off with a really deep, gruff voiceover, kind of, "This is Jimmy," and then Coldplay Fix You or something equally radio heady starts playing in the background. "Jimmy was born with a shark for a leg." And then it garners sympathy that, and you know, Jimmy's probably fine in all honesty, but they edit that out. And I wanted to kind of take TV and disability away from that really narrow sensationist mindset and make it kind of, I suppose, cool. And so BBC Three, a while ago now, did a whole season on disability called Defining the Label. And they wanted to do a focus group to get disabled people who watch TV, who are the end consumer, into a room and talk to them about the everyday issues that affect their life. Because, again, before then, it had been very much kind of middle-class execs who aren't disabled in a room discussing the hypotheticals of what they think disabled people like and do and are. And normally those things are very inaccurate and play to tropes and stereotypes that only perpetuate the stigma around disability. So one of my friends who was organising it called me, and at the time I was like, I'm alright, I hate focus groups, we're all going to have to stand up and say a name and a fact about ourselves, and I don't want to do that. Thank you for the offer, I hope it goes well. Are we still on for lunch on Monday? Excellent, and thought nothing of it till the day of the focus group when she called me. And she was like, everyone's pulled out, I need you there. I'm like, fine. Number one, you owe me dinner. And I'm not talking McDonald's, I'm talking Nando's dinner. And point two, if at any point I have to stand up, say my name, and a fact about myself, I'm going to be annoyed. So I walked in the room, sat down away from the door, which was a mistake in hindsight, and sat next to a man called Elliot Reid, who is now one of my commissioning execs at the BBC. And this lady still went, hi, welcome to our focus group. Before we begin, let's all go around the room. No! Say our name. No! And a fact about ourselves. Damn you, Sophie! And this girl stood up and went, hi, my name's Helen. And we all had to go, hi, Helen. And then she goes, my interesting fact is, I have 10 different disabilities. To which I said, in what I thought was a quiet voice, all right, Helen, chill out, it's not a bloody competition. Then Elliot, lying sat next to me, burst out laughing. So the whole thing looked a lot less subtle than I thought it would. But the focus group went well, and off of that, I then got the gig doing the BBC Three doc, The Ugly Face of Disability Hate Crime, which got 5 stars in the Times. It was the only non-drama programme that made the Guardian's top 10 programmes of 2015. So I'm better than Mad Men, but not as good as Game of Thrones, which isn't bad for a disabled guy from Croydon. And it was, again, really important. I then got on to get another BBC Three documentary looking at the history and current day of American freak shows, and that's all well and good. I think it's perfectly fine for a disabled journalist to talk about disabled guy stuff, as long as it isn't the only thing that they do. Because disabled people can do a lot more than just your regular kind of disabled guy stuff. And I'm at the point now where I'm fortunate, where I've been able to cut my teeth, prove my mettle, and been given a lot of opportunities that I've grasped with both hands, where I'm now able to do things that aren't about disability. So I'm currently about to do voiceover for Series 3 of Channel 4's Trip to the Restaurant Trade. I get paid to go and eat food, it's amazing. It's not even a job, it's just free money and free food, amazing. And then we got Series 4 of that coming up, just did another movie in New York and Pennsylvania. And so I've been fortunate, and I think we're in a culture now where the stigma and the rhetoric around disability is slowly but surely improving. And I think it's events like the Paralympics in 2012 and events like this that are really, really helping that. I think anything that lets people know that it's okay not to be okay, and all you have to do is be you, are amazing. When I was younger, I spent all this time trying to be cool and trying to be something I wasn't, trying to bang this kind of square peg into a round hole. I was a bit short, I was a bit fat, I played a lot of games, watched a lot of pro wrestling, And I still do, but I'm 32 now, and it's cool. Whereas when you're 12, it's like more acceptable, but less cool. My girlfriend hates it. She's always like, when are you going to grow up? Never. And so to anyone kind of watching this in the room or on the online, just you be you and do your thing. I could spend my whole life trying to become the best Justin Bieber impersonator on the face of the earth. I'm only ever going to be second best to Justin Bieber, which in and of itself would be mildly heartbreaking, that Justin Bieber is better at something than me, but also a massive, futile waste of time. But the question now lies as to how do we get there? Question 1, what are you good at? Question 2, is that legal? Don't be the person that goes, I'm so good at smoking pot, it's amazing. Like, no one's going to give you a job as a disability activist because you're good at the pot. So maybe go back and have a rethink. But also, and this is how I got there, what pisses you off? More often than not, if you can find your misery, you can find your ministry. And then go in, see the change you want to make, and be that really irritating voice of reason that asks the awkward questions that no one wants to answer, but yet they somehow have to. Changing the world is a very simple 3-step process. See BS, call BS, and change BS. My name is Adam Pearson. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'll happily field them.
A lot of people from a range of backgrounds often use humour as a way to shield themselves or to build relationships with people. How did you find like your humour? Has it always come natural to you?
Yeah, even as a kid, I was always a fan of comedy in general. I was born in the 80s, so we always had like Dad's Army, Only Fools and Horses, the 10% of Monty Python that actually is funny on in the house, so I kind of gravitated to it anyway. But I think humour is a very effective communication tool. Laughter is one of the very few things that we do communally. Yeah. And it's really good at bringing people together. Humour is like a universal language, and there are many different ways of doing it. And I think it just neutralises what can be a really awkward situation from the word go, and also just shows the humanity of disability. I could go in with the stats and the law and the kind of sandwich board and megaphone, but I think that's dramatically unhelpful.
And I think it's a case that everyone who's able to listen to this, and hopefully the people online as well, would have been laughing and would have been really understanding what you had to say as well. Was it a case that the humour just came to you naturally, or have you had to work over time, or is there a situation where you're not in the mood to be funny anymore, but people still expect it?
I think I'm naturally quite kind of a funny and charismatic guy, and of course if I'm writing a talk I will sit down and think about little one-liners you can throw in, and I'll always have kind of relatable material there. And of course we all have kind of good days and bad days. There are some days I wake up and I'm just not feeling it, but then you still kind of need to go out and get on with it and face the world, and you can face it till you make it on those days.
So your career seems to be going from strength to strength. And when you first maybe applied for that job at the BBC as an admin, did you ever think it would get to where you were now?
No, I actually didn't get the job I applied for. I applied for a job in Radio 6 Music and came second. And they sent you this email going, oh, but we really liked you and we'll keep you in mind for, and it's, the kind of cut and paste jobs. Yeah. And then they called me 2 days later and said, we've had this job come up in commissioning management. Are you interested? To which I went, yes. Thinking they'd be like, awesome, we'll send you the application form, fill it in, and we'll let you know. And they were like, awesome, your interview's tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, that gives me like no time to do any prep. And yeah, got there, did it, nailed it, and that was like 7 years ago now.
Long time. And then was it a case that you thought you'd get to presenting, or you never ever even envisioned
presenting
it?
was never really on my radar. I wanted to get into production, kind of casting, researching, producing, getting your hands dirty and getting down to the actual nuts and bolts of making TV. And then I just got thrust onto a few little, they call them strand segments on a few Channel 4 things. And then I did a few documentaries, and it worked out.
So then, was it a case that you thought that you wouldn't be a presenter simply because of your disability, or you just didn't want to in the first place?
I think I came into TV at the right time. Okay. I think since kind of 2008, 2009, there's been a real push for on-screen disability and equality and diversity. So I was there as all of that was being discussed. So when they had all these kind of targets they had to hit, and I had to look around and be like, oh my word, we need a disabled guy that knows English, can string a sentence together, and can walk and talk at the same time. You, come here. Yeah. And it was very much a case of right place, right time. But now there's a lot more of us. Like, they always say we need more disabled people in TV. And I'm always there going, I agree, but just not too many of them. Just kind of 4 at a time, because I've still got to work.
Exactly.
So I've always got to stay kind of ahead of everyone else, kind of ever so slightly.
And what's your goal for the future? So I imagine when you were growing up, there wasn't obviously that many disabled people on TV to begin with. So
no.
How does it feel kind of embodying the disabled person on TV and knowing there's children out there who look to you as a role model?
Yeah. Like kids, aim high, really. There are so much better role models than me. No, it's the good kind of pressure. You get to kind of dictate the cultural pace for disability and how people see it and how people talk about it. And I think there's also this expectation that as a kind of disabled guy on TV, that I'm going to go on TV and kind of be nice, funny, agreeable, and not controversial. And then the opposite happens, and people are always a little bit like, I'm not quite sure how to take what he's just said. Like when I do stand-up, people always expect me just to be kind of middle of the road, like one-liners. And then when I get a bit edgy and awkward and borderline offensive, they're like, okay.
That's why exactly. Through comedy, we're able to challenge people and challenge people's perceptions and their comfort zones. But the flip side of that, especially with social media, this is kind of an out there question. A lot of the times, which happen a lot now, is we have the meme culture where a picture will be taken of someone and someone will put what they deem as a funny.
I've got a meme.
Exactly. How does it make you feel when that happens to disabled people? Because obviously that's the darker side of the internet.
Yeah. Social media is a very weird one because I have two sides to me, and one side of me is very kind of matter of fact. It's just like if you don't like Twitter, don't go on Twitter. They've got off buttons for a reason. But then I also don't want to legitimise that kind of behaviour and that kind of rhetoric. So it's a really, really tricky line to have to walk. And unfortunately, I'm quite thick-skinned. But I had a meme come up me online that was it was like a UFC meme. It was actually quite cool because I got the reference, so I could argue back with it. But then there are other people who don't take it as well. And the law around kind of hate speech and social media is utterly toothless. Yeah, exactly. As well, and I think we just all need to grow up a little bit. And if you can't use social media properly, then you should not be allowed. If you don't have a driving license, you can't drive a car. If you can't not be a dick online, you should not be allowed to use Twitter. Exactly.
So then, if you were to give just one piece of advice to like that child who doesn't become a meme, but it's on social media and realising that there's some nasty people out there, how can they develop the shield that you talked about from Game of Thrones?
The people that matter don't mind, and the people that mind don't matter. And the fact that there is someone out there who apparently looks like an egg, who has nothing better to do than slam you in 140 characters or less, is no indictment on you, it's more of an indictment on them, and how lonely, miserable, and sad they are. And don't let it be your problem. Live the life you have as opposed to more than the one you don't. And prove them wrong. Cool. There's no better feeling than looking at the world and going, I told you so.
Well, on those powerful words, once again, can we thank Adam for an amazing talk and an interview as well. Thanks a lot, sir.
No problem, man.